Now we're going to talk about investing the wax model. The essential question is, what about measuring, calculating, and pouring investment are important when preparing to cast? You can also take Cornell notes in the link that's provided below. The learning targets for investment are: I understand the tools, techniques, and order of the investment process in order to properly cover my wax model for casting. I understand all safety protocols to protect my body and others during the investment process, and I understand the calculations needed to produce the correct weight of metal for my cast piece. Before you can invest your model, you do need to make sure that it's properly attached by a sprue. We talked about that in the Creating a Wax Model video, which you can review again if you need to remember how to do that. You need to make sure that you weigh your model correctly with either a triple beam balance or a digital scale. We will most likely be using a digital scale in the classroom. Just so that we are clear, investment is actually a plaster-like substance that covers your model in order to cast your piece. The wax will be burned out of the mold, creating a hollow space where your model was, and then we will put liquid metal in that place. You do need to make sure that you're calculating the weight of the wax and converting it to metal before you invest your piece. Here's the formula for wax to metal calculation. Basically, you have to weigh the rubber stopper and also the sprued rubber stopper with your model on it. You will then subtract the rubber stopper from the sprued rubber stopper in order to get your correct weight. Then you will be doing some other calculations that include using the specific atomic weights of silver, pewter, or gold. You will then multiply that weight by 20% in order to make sure that you have the sprues and the button when you actually go to cast your piece. It's really important that you do this correctly. This page actually shows the calculations that you'll be doing. You can see you have the sprued rubber stopper on top. You're then going to subtract the rubber stopper alone from that. On line 3, you're writing the weight of the one subtracted from the other, and then you're going to multiply it times the specific gravity of whatever metal you're using. Then you're going to take number 3 and you're going to multiply it times 1.2 because you're adding 20% to your original model. So you have to have the 100% of the model and then the 20% that you're adding, which is why we multiply times 1.2. As you are investing, you need to make sure that you wear a mask because investment has carcinogens in it, meaning that it causes cancer, so you should not be breathing that powder in. When you are ready to mix your investment, you need to make sure that you understand what size flask you are using. That's that steel part, because you have to use different amounts of water in order to mix your investment. Once you've done that, you should also put 2 layers of tape on your flask so that the investment doesn't run out. Notice that on this page, the person did not use the correct size rubber stopper and flask, and then all of the investment leaked out. If you don't put the tape on the top of the flask, you can also have the investment leak out of your piece. It's very important, however, to make sure that when you pour the investment that you are only going to the top of the flask, because too much space beyond that will not allow it to cast in the centrifuge. It won't fit in the arm. So here you can see there are some layers of masking tape on top of the flasks before the investment was poured over the top of the molds. And you can see the rubber stopper on the bottom and the pink wax that is the model inside the flask. You're going to take the water and pour it inside a black rubber bowl, and then you're going to sprinkle the investment powder into that bowl and then mix it with your hands. You can also mix it without having gloved hands. It doesn't hurt your hands. The carcinogen risk is gone once the water is added to the investment. One other thing that you need to make sure that you're thinking of is that the consistency of the investment should feel like pancake batter as you are mixing it. It's not like milk, which is very thin. Pancake batter has a little bit more of a thickness to it, or like a milkshake. When you have the investment mixed correctly, you're then going to immediately pour it in your flask at a 45-degree angle and use the investment vibrator for a specific amount of time to shake any bubbles away from your model. The reason that we do the shaking process is you don't want to have extra metal adhered to the outside of your model. First of all, you're going to have to file it off, and that takes more time. And secondly, it could potentially make your piece not work if it was a really huge air bubble that was still adhered to the side of your piece when the investment dries. Most of the problems that occur during the casting process happen during the calculation and investment process. Once you are done shaking your piece, you're going to write your name and weight in the top of the flask. The reason that we do this is that once the tape comes off of the flasks, all of the flasks look the same. So it's important to have your name and weight carved into the top of your flask. You will need to wait 2 days before you actually cast your piece. This shouldn't be a problem because you'll invest one period, and then because we are on the AB schedule, you should be able to cast the next time we have class. If you are not going to be in class, you need to make sure to tell your instructor so that they do not put your piece in the kiln, because refiring a flask that's already been fired could cause your investment to fail, which means that you'll end up with no piece because your metal will go straight through the flask from the cracks that are created from firing it multiple times. Again, it's your responsibility to communicate what's going on, and you will lose points if your absence creates problems during this process. You should now be able to summarize the essential question from the beginning. The investment vibration times are as follows. 30 seconds. You should be shaking your flask and rubber stopper with the liquid investment on it for 30 seconds on high, 30 seconds on medium, and 1 minute on low. The investment vibrators should be on the soldering station areas, and you should see some directions taped to those areas as well. Taped to those areas as well during this process. As you can see here, the materials for investing should be on the anvil tables in the back, except for the scale, which will be up by the teacher desk for safety reasons.